And you really are looking at hospitals and healthcare systems that had pretty low margins potentially being cut in half.
Even the potential impact of AI, and we're talking about capital budgets getting smaller, but the needs not changing. What are going to be the future impacts of AI in the healthcare space?
It's our job as consultants to help our organizations accomplish their goals, and sometimes that's not that pretty picture. It's not that
iconic
building that we want.
This is the Construction Insiders Podcast. I'm Jessica Busch, bringing you the newest trends and strategies in construction, essential to anyone in the industry.
Welcome back to the Construction Insiders Podcast. This is part 2 of our healthcare facilities master planning conversation. Welcome back, Bill, and welcome back, Judd. So let's dive right back into where we were. We had just finished talking about keeping master plans flexible. So I wanted to ask you, how do you keep it flexible without diving into the area of now it's a meaningless document? How do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, for somebody in my seat that sits within an organization helping lead these master plans, like the worst thing that can happen is it's just a static document that sits on a shelf that really nobody buys into. It's a waste of time and it's a waste of money. I think a lot of leaders think that there's only one output and it's going to either be all executable or not executable at all. And that's just not the way I think about it. And I think the industry has evolved, and I think I've met some really great people along the way that have helped teach me as well. But I look at it as like a 3-layered approach, because you should be able to execute the majority of a master plan, regardless of if you have the capital to do the investments at the larger scale that may be the output. The first is, going back to what do we have? What's the infrastructure needs? What does our operations look like today? What should we be reinvesting in? What are our reinvestment needs over the 5 to 10 year horizon to make sure that's part of the plan? Secondly, organizations always have those initiatives that they want to accomplish. Those, they're strategic in nature. Maybe they have certain departments that are up against the thresholds of what they can accomplish. And so those, oftentimes you go into a master plan with a lot of those being somewhat already shaped. And so understanding how they fit in with the master plan, making sure that they fit into the assets that you want to continue to invest in, that you can help the organization further justify those investments and align them, is step 2. And so for most organizations, we should be able to get through step 1 and step 2, and that can be that living framework. Step 3 to me gets a little bit more into the broader view, the land planning, the building development. How do we change kind of what our intent is today, or our focus is today? How do we continue to grow? That's where the strategy can change and evolve. And going back to the flexibility of the envelope, I think that's something that we should be able to do effectively. And yes, if the strategic objectives change, that is what it is. And I think we do it in such a way that we should be able to evolve it, annually or biannually, and make slight tweaks, identify the things that have been executed on, and continue to have it be a framework that everybody buys into. That's when you've really done it right.
Judd, you mentioned the partners, and I think you see some organizations that get capital dollars approved to do a master plan and jump right into the master plan, right? And that's not necessarily what the organization may not be ready to be able to start a master planning process. There has to be some things that happen in advance of hiring those partners to make that an effective master plan, right?
Yeah, absolutely, Bill.
What does effective stakeholder education look like then? Because you're talking about taking this data, you're talking about the different 3 steps. What is the most difficult part of that true education outside of just having the conversation?
Some organizations, and I'm sure, Bill, you've seen it,
Yeah.
they want the CEO or the COO wants to be the one calling the shots, and they give all the information, and ultimately they lead it very directly. I think there are other, organizations, and I've been in a couple where they wanted to get down to the physician level. They want their physicians to be involved in some of the decision making, and there's pros and cons to it all, right? Engagement of your physicians gets better alignment and buy-in from the physicians, but that can be a pretty dangerous proposition.
But that's something, even like we work a lot in schools, and we hear that exact same conversation of they want to get down to the teacher level and usage, and that can be wonderful, or it can be a little dangerous to get that many opinions or cooks in the kitchen.
Right. Yeah. And so it's really important to make sure that you have a very well thought out strategy before you jump in, because some of the less successful master plans that I've been involved in haven't had that that alignment on stakeholder engagement and the education going into it. It was just kind of get into it. We got to get it done, but really we need to educate ourselves on what we're trying to accomplish.
So you almost went there, and now I'm going to go there. Common failure modes and kind of the warning signs of the master plan not going in the direction we want. What are those fails?
One of the areas that I've seen some of the largest failures are when there are too grandiose ideas and too much trying to put into a master plan that far exceed the capital envelope that the organization has to spend.
Okay.
It's great to have long-term goals to do certain things and to bring and drive the organization to a different level. But you'll have to face the reality of how much money you have to spend today.
Right. Okay. That's pretty clear, and that makes sense. Yeah. Judd?
Yeah, I would add, I mean, we talked a little bit about leadership and the alignment and the understanding of what we're trying to accomplish. I think that's a key one, obviously. But I think the second is the assumptions. If there's not complete alignment on how much of the market share an organization wants to capture, or what the intended growth is, or what the which services they want to grow at what rates, that can really force the master plan output to be challenged. And I was in an organization where that exactly happened, and it goes back to the physician discussion. The physicians get engaged. They were asked to provide their own growth and their growth was overly. They looked at it a little bit too aggressively, and when the master plan was done, we fit within the capital envelope, but there were C-suite leaders who didn't buy into the level of growth that some of the physicians had, and that's critically important to make sure all those assumptions are laid on the table. And I think there are ways, one of the things I would add is that there are ways to get around it. Some people say, well, if we don't get the capital capacity, then we can't do anything. I would say each one of those is it's just critically important that you're clear about what the assumptions are that you're making sure that if you don't get the capital capacity from the organization, that you at least say, here's the assumptions we're going to make, and maybe you make it scenario plans where you do it at a low, medium, and high level depending on what they have available. So at least there's some buy-in, and it can be taken seriously when it comes across the finish line.
So let's keep moving forward in the process. Let's talk about best practices as it relates to sequencing your consulting team, because that's critical. I mean, especially we've seen it over and over in our business. The minute something gets approved by the port, or the news is out there about a new tower going up, you get everybody reaching out about, I can help you, I can provide this. What is the best approach when trying to sequence at this level?
To me, it's first you got to know what you're trying to accomplish. There's a lot of organizations out there that will sell you these bolt-on services, whether it's a consultant saying that they have some of the facilities planning, or a architect and engineering firm saying that they have the strategy side. And I think there are obviously situations where that can be very successful, but I think that you've got to make sure you understand what you're trying to accomplish and who you're engaging, because I've seen some of those promises that are made really not be able to be delivered, and that can be really challenging.
Matching the needs with the skills that the providers can bring.
Yeah.
So how is the current environment as it relates to construction and healthcare? How is that changing, or is it changing the way we approach master planning right now?
Boy, it's a little bit of a tough environment. I think Judd can comment on that for sure. But when you look at, a master plan driving new facilities, you have increases in construction cost. You have things, outside forces like tariffs and material costs. You combine that in the healthcare sector with the regulatory, some of the things that are happening in the regulatory side of things, and you really are looking at hospitals and healthcare systems that had pretty low margins potentially being cut in half. And the first thing that happens when revenues start to go down is capital plans start to get smaller.
Yeah, I mean, but what's interesting is it doesn't mean that the needs are getting smaller.
Absolutely
right?
not.
And so what that forces is that's forcing us to look at what are the existing infrastructure, a lot of the things I've talked about throughout, but how do we create redevelopment opportunities to make use of what we have. It's our job as consultants and architects and leaders within the organizations to help our organizations accomplish their goals. And sometimes that's not that pretty picture. It's not that, that big
iconic
building that we want. It's sort of the behind the scenes. Let's do some redevelopment, but it helps continue to grow the organization's strategic needs and continue to help add to the bottom line, which is critically important in healthcare right now with the challenges that it's facing.
And challenges, I'm sure, right? But not to open a can of worms, we haven't touched on even the potential impact of AI. And we're talking about capital budgets getting smaller, but the needs not changing. What are going to be the future impacts of AI in the healthcare space? These are things that you guys are also having to keep in the back of your mind, I'm sure.
And I mean, I'm sure in your organization as well, questions are being asked, right? We're being asked by our leaders, where is it that your business is going to change? And, it's exciting and a bit daunting, but, I think we just don't know yet. And I'm sure there are people that will be listening to this podcast that have ideas about, where they think it's going to change. But, until it, as it relates to master planning, I don't know what that future is going to look like. Even, the design and construction industry as a whole.
Yeah.
I think we're starting to see some bottom level things come in that are really interesting and fun. But how it helps us strategically and at this level, I'm interested to see what the future holds.
Okay. So final question, because I've kept you guys for a while. And I know everyone needs to get on with their day. So what would you say, taking this all in, what is the first most important step for someone that is embarking on this kind of master plan journey? What would you suggest?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've talked about a lot of it throughout this. I think understanding what you're trying to accomplish, what your organization is trying to accomplish. If you're an architect, if you're a consultant, if you're a facility leader, we need to understand exactly what the organization truly wants to get out of a master plan. That is the most critically important step. And then educating, the organizations that we're working with that we are going to create something that is a living, breathing document that looks at everything from what we have to what we need to do. To me, is what makes for success in my mind. And I know there are there are people, there are organizations that haven't done it that way. But with the amount of money we're spending, making sure we know what we're trying to accomplish and getting a good output, it allows organizations to spend their capital wisely, and that's our jobs as consultants and architects and engineers and planners.
Well said.
Well, guys, Bill, Judd, this has been an incredible conversation. So thank you. You've really laid out a genuinely practical, realistic framework, I believe, for our listeners about how to really look at healthcare facilities master planning in a smarter way. So thank you for taking the time with us today. And for the listeners, if you've enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, share. If you've missed part 1, please go back and listen to part 1. It was a really engaging conversation as well. And until next time, keep building the future. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for the Construction Insiders podcast. You can continue the conversation by leaving a comment, asking a question, or participating in our poll. You can also visit us at coming-group.com for more great resources from the most trusted team in the built environment. And don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on our latest episodes.